welcome to my 517 Follow Friday series. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Julie Holton, the principal strategist and owner of mConnexions. Thanks for taking time to chat with me today.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start out with your journey transitioning from the world of television into marketing and communications.
It's quite the journey. I used to call it my tour of duty when I was in TV news because, as some people might know, when you're working in TV news, in order to move up the career ladder, you're literally moving around the country and changing stations. And so I call it my tour of duty. I started while I was still in college. My very first job was in Lansing, working at WLNS. I was a 20-year-old producer in charge of weekend newscasts. So that was someone taking a huge leap of faith in me to get my start, Lisa Farrell, who's amazing. So anyway, I went from Lansing to Saginaw to Richmond, Virginia, Minneapolis to Indianapolis. And it was while I was in Minneapolis before the transition to Indy that I knew I needed to change. That 24/7 burnout lifestyle was just burning me out. I wanted to focus on family, had no time to even figure out how to date, let alone, transition. So it was during that time when my time in Indy was coming to an end that I kind of had that epiphany moment where I suddenly thought, okay, let me move back to Michigan, working in TV. Again, I returned to WLNS, back to my roots as an executive producer at that point. So now kind of like coming back from the big markets to train the producers and figure out what the heck I was going to do. I thought maybe Michigan State for grad school, maybe just some time back in my home state to figure it out. And during that time, there was a job opening at Fraser Trebilcock in downtown Lansing, the law firm, and for a marketing director position. And I thought, well, what they really need is a storyteller. What they really need is media coverage. I know that part of marketing. And then the more I kind of engrossed myself in the world of marketing, the more I realized everything we do is marketing. Everything we do is selling our businesses, selling ourselves. And so that's where I made the transition into marketing. Was there 5 years and then launched my own agency, mConnexions.
Very nice. What was it like working for that mid-sized law firm? As a law firm owner myself, it's interesting to hear that, they actually have somebody on staff or had someone on staff that did that. What was that like for you?
My gosh, a lot of what I did was also internal. So you think like oftentimes we'll think of the external marketing. Of course, that was a big part of it, the community outreach. That was when actually I worked with the Lansing Chamber. We created the business education series that still exists today. And so a lot of that educational outreach, really connecting the attorneys to potential clients, of course, but also to the community at large and kind of that giving back sort of way. But then a lot of it was also internal. So the internal communications and kind of getting everyone on the same page. Oftentimes in a mid-sized firm, especially when you get into larger firms, people are in silos. And so from one office to the next or one practice area to the next, you may not know what the others are doing. So I really kind of bridged both of those worlds and worked a lot in the internal and the external marketing and communications.
Yeah, that's huge when you've got that many practice areas and so many moving parts. It's really important.
Yeah, I mean, it was over 70 practice areas, which even for a firm, they had about 48 attorneys while I was there. And, the numbers would fluctuate a little bit. And 48 attorneys, but think of all of those practice areas. It's a lot for one system to be able to manage and keep track of. But it was a lot of fun, frankly.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I've got, maybe four. I've got like 2 core practice areas and I maybe do 4 or 5 total. I can't imagine even how to approach the outward like community marketing about my practice areas if I had 70. That's just crazy. So and now that you've got mConnexions up and running, that's been since 2017, right?
Yeah.
You've got a very robust array of marketing options that you offer. Can you talk about any specific services that you'd like to share more about?
Yeah. So, fun story for me when I launched mConnexions, it was really about taking everything I had learned and was doing during my 5 years at Fraser and my years in media, and then wanting to just create that time freedom, that, all those buzzwords that we hear about the entrepreneur life. And I realized, though, very quickly that I could also create that for other people. And before COVID made it cool, I established a virtual agency. So my team is spread out. We have expertise across the state, outside of the state. And I realized that by focusing in different areas of marketing, not just what I wanted to do, but what others on my team wanted to do, and then bringing people in when there was an area that we couldn't quite, I'm a perfectionist, so I always want to have like the best. And if there's something that was lacking, I would bring in someone specifically in that area. And so that's been kind of this fun puzzle piece of putting together the agency. So really, even though we're a boutique agency, we offer full service marketing, everything. And we really focus on growth. So my passion is talking to someone like you, talking to a business owner, or talking to someone in a business development, sales, marketing role, and really getting down into what are the areas that you want to grow in, what is the most profitable, what's the most enjoyable, because sometimes those two are different.
Mhm.
And then looking at what marketing tactics and strategies are out there to help you achieve your goals. So then through that, we do social media marketing, we build websites, we focus on SEO, Google AdWords,
Mhm.
email campaigns. We're really targeted in the content creation that we do, and then the distribution. So all of those ways to get really to focus on the growth and to get that messaging out there.
Very nice. Now, you mentioned COVID, like you were doing the virtual thing before it was the required thing for a while. I feel like the social media world has changed a lot since COVID and even just a little bit before then. And I'm just curious, how have you had to rethink your strategies over the last 6-ish years uh, to keep up with that and keep bringing fresh new things to your clients?
Yeah, I love that you asked this because it's a complete overhaul. If we look at our strategies now versus what they looked like before COVID, and frankly, we knew even in those first few weeks of COVID that the strategies that we had created for our clients, even that year, were out the window. Everything was changing and we were trying to adjust, as everyone was, on the fly. Well, now it's completely different. I mean, think about how you personally use social media. How I know how I use it personally is very different from before COVID. During COVID in those early days, we were all online all the time. We couldn't, it was almost like that feeling of not being able to connect made us want to connect more. And
Mhm.
people still want to connect now. All the research is showing that people are craving connection, but they're also very critical, cynical, jaded about social media, and understanding the realities of what we see, what we don't see. I don't know about for you, Katrina, but I know that like in my, even in my own personal life, it's this love-hate relationship, and kind of more hate than love of you want to feel connected, you want to see what's going on, but you're kind of pulling away. It's more of a necessity. And
Mhm.
so with that in mind of how we're personally using it, businesses have to adjust how
Yeah.
they're using it, and understand that mindset that people really more so than ever do not want to be sold when they're on
Mhm.
social media.
Yeah. I've had to really scale my approach more to be educational versus sales. And a big part of that for me was recognizing that COVID really created this influx of people to social media that weren't really on it before. Some of it's generational, some of it's not, but I've really noticed that even just in my own sphere, like family, friends, people are more active now than they were before because some of it was necessity. And I do feel like that has shaped a lot of what I've been doing. And I did take an educational approach from the very beginning, but it really has been more of my focus than sales. Some of that is just that's just how I am. So
Yeah, well, and then you were ahead of the curve. I mean, it's that thought leadership, people who really had that down before the
mhm,
changes. I mean, you're sitting in a good spot compared to people who are just now trying to play catch up and figure out what that looks like.
yeah. Now, for someone like me, small business owner, one of the things I struggle with is growing followers. And part of that is, I think, because I don't have that very outward sales mindset and growth mindset. It's more educational. So anytime I feel like I'm trying to reach out for followers, it's just a little awkward. But do you have any pointers, any suggestions for someone who's just trying to grow their follower base so that their reach is further?
Yeah, I think one of the like best kept secrets is not really a secret, but it's like it's kind of kept hidden because no one wants to talk about it, and that's ad spend. If you think about why these platforms exist in the first place, like Facebook, for instance, like sure, Mark Zuckerberg had this idea as a college student, but then that idea, at the core of it is to make money. So how does a platform make money? And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's not just this free platform for businesses to use to get the word out. There's a reason why, and people don't necessarily want to see all of the business stuff when they log into their Facebook account. They want to see their friends and family. So there's a reason why the algorithms prioritize things in certain ways. And we can get into all the debate about what it should and should not do and censorship and all of that. But when we're looking at it from the small business perspective, we have to keep that in mind. So don't be scared of ad spend. And when I say ad spend, it could be $20 to, if you're, for instance, I'm working on an event that's coming up, and in order to reach new people who either are following the page but just aren't seeing the post because it gets lost in the algorithm shuffle, or people who would be following the page if they knew about it, you can put even $20 down and with a very targeted approach, hit the right people in order to get them to follow. So I think that's one of the things people tend to shy away. They want it to be free. And of course, who doesn't? And especially when startups or small businesses don't have the budget for it, or they're just starting out, it makes sense. You still want to make sure to read all the things or connect with someone who knows what they're doing, because you can definitely spend money that's going to go nowhere. I have an interesting expert connections episode with marketers who talk about the big fails that they have, and one of them talks about spending thousands of dollars on Facebook ads that went nowhere, and that was not his area of expertise, so he shouldn't. So you want to be smart about it, but I would say don't shy away. Take a look at what how that could help you. The other thing though is, like, don't confuse that with buying followers. A lot of people got into problems with Instagram because they were paying for services that would literally just buy followers. And these were bots that would come in, give an immediate boost to numbers. Like, we're talking like thousands of followers that
Wow.
actually were empty followers. So first of all, these are not people that are going to be buying your services or
Yeah.
engaging with you in some way. These are, bots that as soon as you stop paying, they're gone. And they might actually still be following your page. So it might look like you have a high number of followers, but that ratio of the number of followers to the number of people engaging with your post is going to be so low that Instagram is going to immediately look at it and say, okay, well, this content must not be relevant to the audience because the audience isn't engaging with it. So many reasons not to buy followers, but to pay for the advertising, to pay for the placement, to put your posts in front of people. And then last thing I'll say on that, because I could talk about that all day, is you want to be paying for the posts like what you're doing, Katrina. You want them to be the educational, the resourceful posts, not the like, hey, I mean, like, maybe if you have a big sale going on that I'm not saying don't do that, but if you're looking to grow followers and not sales, then I would sales come with the followers, but you know what I mean? If your immediate goal is followers, then focus on the content that will encourage people to follow you for more of that content.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think I did toy around with ads a little bit early on. And I do I feel like it's daily. I get a message, usually through Instagram, clearly is not a real person. And it's always, hey, we'll boost your followers by so many. And I just swipe and delete because it's just
Yeah.
that it's not legit. Um, so yeah, I will definitely look into that. Something else I am curious about, because I've heard little sprinklings here and there, is threads. And I know that it's kind of this spin-off or a different take on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it now, but it's just another social media platform. It feels really overwhelming though to think about branching out into something else, because I've already got Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and blogging on the website. So what if my thread followers are just going to be the same as really Instagram? What's the benefit in branching out? What can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, these are all great questions because it's overwhelming as a business owner or as a marketer to be like, oh my gosh, I have one more thing. Like it's more work, one more thing to do. And then research about how the platform works and what to do with it. Alexis Newman on my team at mConnexions, we did an Expert Connections episode when Threads first came out. And actually, we did a couple of them because we also focused on Elon Musk's branding mistakes with X, as X and Threads are competing. So check that out. But and Alexis could answer much more deeply than me on this. Initially, we saw a big push, probably the biggest push in all of the social media platforms, the biggest rush of new users. But that was because everyone was simply claiming their profile or checking out the platform. Then we saw a big decline in the actual user engagement and people actually using the platform. That has been set, and that was, I would say that would be expected because again, everyone wants to check it out. There's nothing really there to check out yet. So then they leave. Now we're seeing that like users actually like the daily usage starting to uptick again. And so I would say all of that mumbo jumbo aside, you have to be where your followers are. So if your followers are on Threads, then definitely consider being on Threads. If those same followers are on Instagram and they're actively using Instagram, then I think right now you have this period of time to continue to watch and figure out, do you need to be on both? I'm not necessarily of the mindset that you need to just put the same message on both because people are going to, whether they do it consciously or not, they're going to stop following you in one of those places.
Right.
But what you don't want to have happen, if some of your users kind of pull back on using Instagram, for instance, and they're using Threads more, you don't want them now to miss your messages. And so I think that would be like a safe space would be to take the messages you're putting out on Instagram and, repurpose them in a way that makes sense for Threads and how that platform works. But at the same time, I say this to business owners all the time. If it's overwhelming you, if it's going to, if you just like take that deep breath in and you're like, that panic of, oh my gosh, more work, then don't do it. No one says you have to do it. The rule is not to be on all platforms all the time. You have to pick and choose, and you want to make the choices you make, the platforms you're on, make that content good, make that, strong quality content instead of trying to be everywhere. You're going to spread yourself too thin. And at the end of the day, you'd end up doing more social media marketing than running your business. And you don't want that to get in the way.
Right. I also think that when I think about joining something like Threads or really any other platform, branching out in different types of ways from non-social media marketing, I also am focusing on my demographic. And I don't think my demographic for my service is heavily on Threads right now. I think that the same applies to Instagram. It's just not, it's not a big generator of clients. So and that's going to be different from business to business. So I think that's a great approach to kind of just sit back and see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to video podcasting, what we're doing here today, what are some simple steps that someone like me could take to up my game?
Ooh, I love that. That's a great question. I've got a whole blog on that I'll send to you.
Ooh, okay.
I think that, like, first of all, just setting up a camera, setting up a mic, starting it, like just doing it, that's the first step.
Right.
Because and I say you're already doing that, you're way ahead of that, but a lot of people really get hesitant about putting content out there. I'm working with a client right now who has a fantastic idea. In fact, he's been filming it for over a year now, but he's not put out any full episodes. And he's got amazing content. And it's like, it's first of all, it's not going to be perfect. If you go back and you listen to my first podcast 5 years ago for the Think Tank of Three, or if you look at my first Expert Connections episodes, they are far from perfect. I mean, I worked in TV, but I was not on camera, so that is not my comfort zone. So put it out there when it's not perfect, and then start looking at, okay, like look at it with not right after you record, come back to it, give it time to rest, but come back to it and look at it and say, okay, what's the quality look like? How does the audio sound? What does the visuals look like? Are there graphics I can be using to make this better? Are the graphics easy to read, or are they too fancy and cutesy and creative that now I am losing the information? Things like that. I would really focus on looking at that quality. Once you've got that down, then continue to look at those incremental steps to make it more polished, make it more creative. So hopefully that helps. But, I
Yeah.
the hardest part is just doing it and just putting it
Yes.
out there.
And that was the hardest part for me, was really transitioning this series from just a straight post on social media with a photo for the person and a little blurb to full on video podcasting, meeting with them. And it's been a while. I haven't gone back to look at my first videos from April, or maybe it
I
was,
might not want to.
it's,
Speaking from my own
yeah,
experience, I don't know what yours look like, but
it's definitely better. And I've improved in different areas. My husband bought a fancy microphone, and I've been told the audio is a lot better. So um yeah, but I do think that just taking that first step was the hardest for me. And I'm sure it does hold people back. Yeah.
yeah, and we're always going to be our biggest critics, our,
Yeah.
our own, that internal voice, especially when we're watching ourselves back or hearing ourselves back. It's very uncomfortable. So
Mhm.
keep that in mind. And I think just like anything else in business or in life, like seek out people who can give you feedback, that they're not just going to tell you what you want to hear, but they're going to give
Mhm.
you some. I mean, I've sent my show to people that I worked with in news. I've talked with, so we all need to take those steps to make improvements, but just do it. just plug it in and get going.
And I've enjoyed it. I feel like I've gotten more comfortable every time I record, and it's just a lot of fun. So approach
Yeah,
it from a fun perspective, and it kind of makes the rest of it just shy away. Yeah.
exactly.
The last thing I wanted to chat with you about is in 2017, you received the Lansing Chamber of Commerce 10 over the next 10 award. And I was reading through your website. You had a nice, I don't remember if it was a blog post or something about that. And, we're 6 years later. You definitely were somebody to watch closely. So I'm just curious, what has been your biggest takeaway after receiving that honor and everything you've gone through the last 6 years?
Oh, that's a big question. I did have some time this year to reflect on that. It was one of those things, the kind of like all the alum who have won the award get together for a breakfast the morning of the award ceremony, or the week before the award ceremony. And it was one of those days where I had so much to do. I didn't want to go. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to like prep and put on real clothes and makeup, like the whole thing, and then like go and network. And sometimes I just don't feel like it. And I walked into the room that morning, and I like walked into a room of friends.
Mhm.
It like hit me as I walked in, like, oh my gosh, like why didn't I want to leave my house? Like I'm walking in, like these are business connections who've become friends. And so that to me was my biggest takeaway this year, is just when you really work on the relationships and when a community comes together and supports one another. I had the opportunity when I was launching mConnexions. I thought, okay, this is the time for me to decide, do I stay in Lansing or do I go someplace else? Like this is my next career move. And I chose to stay in Lansing because this community is so supportive.
Yes.
And as I started kind of looking around the state, I thought, why would I want to go anywhere else when my support system is already here? And so for me, that's what 10 over the next 10 has been, is now kind of I don't look at it like pressure to become something in 10 years. I look at it like, how can I contribute? How am I giving back? How am I growing my own business and my own life in a way that benefits the community, benefits other people? And that to me is what it's all about. And so with that in mind, I'm like, okay, like achieved. I've already, I've done the things that I'm supposed to do just by being a part of the community and sharing, my gifts with the community. So, and it's funny because sometimes I even forget that I'm in this group, and I don't say that to take it lightly, because it was a huge surprise and a really big honor when I was honored with it. I just look at how many incredible people we have in our community, and I think, wow, like it's really special to be a part of that group.
Yeah, I'm still amazed at the connections that I've made over the last 2 years. I'm about 2.5 years into starting my firm, and it still just blows me away, the reach uh, that I've had. And I walk into a room now, and I'm like, oh, I know so many people here, and these are amazing people. And usually it's full of people who've helped me grow my business, and it really is an amazing community for small businesses. I love it. I can't
Yeah.
imagine being anywhere else. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I have had such a wonderful time chatting with you. I had so much fun putting together questions, and I could talk about so many other things with you. Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode.
Oh, I would love that. This has been so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I will. I'll share all of your contact information in the caption for the video. And if anyone watching is exploring some marketing services, I would definitely recommend that you check out her website. She's got great information and resources and blogs and podcasts and everything. So it's a treasure trove. And if you're interested in being featured on my Follow Friday series, you can send me an email at katrina@cornerstonelegalplc.com. Thanks for watching.